What a lovely background, isn't it? It really is, because these are the twin flames right here. Let me move myself out of the way. I can't. There they are. There they are. Anyway, we're just going to cover them up. We do not need to see any of that. Now, do we? No, we do not. So the twin flame connection signs. So a lot of people may feel as though they have met a twin flame, but it may not actually be a twin flame. It could be a soulmate that they're confusing for a twin flame. So we're going to break this down and really discuss what the connection signs are when it comes to meeting an actual twin flame, because these are very, very different here. So when you meet someone who is a twin flame connection, which is your own soul but in a different body, this is usually a connection that starts out very, very strong. And there's a sense of knowing and familiarity with this person. It's like you feel as though you know them, even though you've never really met them. And this usually will last a few weeks initially, as you really get to know them and really start to communicate with them and really feel this type of connection. But then there is this massive shift that happens after a few weeks or a few months or so, where there is this level of disconnection from this individual, where they become very distant from you, and that usually will cause you a lot of pain and cause you to have a lot of self-reflection. Now, this level of pain that you end up feeling, usually you would feel it as so much stronger than if it's just another person. It's like you really can't pinpoint exactly why there is this massive pain that you have for someone that perhaps you haven't known for all that long. It's a very, very interesting thing. But this causes you to have a lot of self-reflection within you, to realize some of the things that perhaps have been a bit detrimental within your own life, or things that you need to work on within your own life to really get you to a more stable place. And that stable place essentially will be you being not so detached from this person. But we will get to that in just a moment. So this level of pain that you feel will end up leading to something called ego death. And if you've never experienced what ego death is, let's go ahead and try to explain it a little bit here. So the ego, the mind. The ego is basically something within us, our mind. It is our brain and our mind that is a defense mechanism in many, many ways. But of course, it can also be a hindrance. It can cause a lot of problems if we don't get our ego in check. So when we have an ego death, that is basically everything that you thought you were essentially is no longer of existence to you. And you start to wonder, like, what is the reason for your existence? You begin to question and wonder why you are here. What is your purpose in life? And you have this sense of meaninglessness, as if nothing actually is important or means anything, because you've literally lost something that you have built up within your mind. Because this ego, you have used it to define who you are. The ego is something that you use when you're talking to someone else. You say, you are so-and-so, here are your interests, here are all the things that make you you. But that's really not you. That's just the ego. That's how the ego will communicate. So when you have an ego death, you basically realize that you're not the ego. There's something much deeper within you, and that leads to this sense of meaninglessness and this loss of identity, where you feel as though you're very disconnected from yourself because you don't know who you are anymore. Because everything that you had built up is now gone. Usually after this will happen, you will experience this massive spiritual awakening, and it will occur with this heightened sense of intuition about things that end up coming true. So when you have a spiritual awakening, things can seem as though things are getting a little bit wild. You will often see repeating number patterns. You will often have a increased number of synchronicities within your life. You'll begin to see a lot of repeating patterns, synchronicities all over the place. And that really gets you to the point of you questioning reality itself, where you're like, am I living in a dream? None of this really makes any sense to me. So when you go through this process, when you're actually feeling all of this that is caused by meeting this other person, or basically meeting you in a different body, it causes this massive change within you that causes this spiritual awakening. And this spiritual awakening is very profound, and it happens very quickly and very suddenly, usually basically in this order of how you go about your own life and existence, and how you met this person. So seeing the synchronicities, having the intuition, some of these things starting to come true, these are all very important signs. Because if you don't experience those things with another person, then that is not your twin flame. Now, of course, to some degree, you could have that with a soulmate connection. But it's very, very, if we're talking about soulmate connection, like maybe it's like this so much. Twin flame connection will be like all the way up here, just the level of synchronicities and spiritual awakening that ends up happening. So if you've only experienced soulmate connections and you've experienced a lot of profound growth, well, unless you actually meet a twin flame person, your own soul, then you don't know just the level of crazy synchronicities that can lead to this just massive awakening within your own life. So it can be pretty wild. It really can. The other thing that can end up happening is that there can be a lot of sudden changes within your life. Things that are very unexplainable, and some of them can actually be very, very negative for you. So all of a sudden, very, very negative or bad things could happen within your life that have no explanation whatsoever. But this usually leads to you being able to address them appropriately and purge them out of existence. Almost as if the things that no longer serve you are coming to the surface and being removed from you, so that you are now becoming more in alignment with who you truly are. And who are you truly, deep down below the ego? Let's think about that for a moment, because if we just think about ego, if we just think about our self as ego, that really doesn't define who we are at the deepest level. Instead, the deepest part of us is the soul. Who we are deep down is a soul that we are here experiencing life in this physical world. So that's what you are deep down. You are a soul deep down. So a lot of these things, these negative things that end up coming up to the surface and being purged from you, or you having to face those challenges and you having to address those, is basically life telling you and your soul telling you, these are the things that no longer serve you, and you have to get rid of those to align with who you truly are, which at the deepest level is your own soul. The other thing is, when you connect with your true self, which is you're a soul, that is so much more important than focusing on the other person. The main reason being is when you focus on the other person, which still is your own soul in a different body, you're not doing the spiritual work needed to really grow and become the version of yourself. Because the whole purpose of meeting twin flame is so that you have a spiritual awakening and go through this growth and are able to connect with yourself and your own soul so that you're able to grow. That's really the main purpose of this sort of stuff. And a lot of times, if you look up any sort of information online about twin flame connections and all this sort of stuff, you will often hear that, I would say there's a lot of information that when I've looked into it, it doesn't really sound quite right. It really doesn't. Because the thing is, you should be focusing on yourself and not the other person. Because what happens when you constantly are obsessing and focusing on the other person? That causes you to feel very bad, very negative, start to have these obsessive thoughts, and it leads to very negative and self-destructive behavior that really is not something that you need within your life. So it's all about connecting with who you truly are. When you're able to go inward and do spiritual practices, meditation is very good to start to break down the ego and connect with who you truly are at the deepest level. When you do those practices, then that can be something that is highly beneficial for you here. And the thing is, you don't need to heal anything about you in order to connect with the deepest level of you. This is something that I do often hear a lot, or often what I have found over the past several months is that a lot of spiritual practices are just psychology in disguise. When you think about this could be something that I talk about in its own video, because this is something that is quite a lot, but it really is just psychology in disguise in a very different way. And I think I take a very big interest in psychology, so I'm very in tune with that sort of stuff. So when I see spiritual practices that basically are about psychology, it's really not. I mean, I guess it can help you to some degree really connect or get rid of some of the negative thoughts and everything. But unless it really allows you to connect with your deepest, truest self, which is far beyond the ego and the mind, because a lot of these spiritual practices, it's just focusing on the mind. It's not focusing on your own soul. Then it's really not going to help you all that much. So you have to go beyond the ego, go beyond psychology, and a lot of these spiritual type of practices that only focus on the mind and physical things. You have to connect with the deepest level of you, your own being. That is what the whole purpose of a twin flame connection is. So it could be romantic in nature, and that's how some people approach it initially, until a lot of changes happen that make you realize that you have to stop focusing on the other person and focus on yourself for your own growth. That is the whole purpose of what a twin flame connection is. It's not necessarily the ultimate love partner, which it could be. It could be. But that should not be what the goal is. That should not be what you're focusing on. What you should be focusing on is your own personal growth, so that you're able to align with who you truly are below the mind, beyond the mind. The mind is physical. The ego is physical. Those are physical things. Connect with your own soul, and then I think you will have a much better time and understand things much more efficiently in the world and why these things happen.